Hi, St. Mary's students. Today I'm going to read a book to you called The Survivor Tree by Gay Sanders. This book is for remembrance of the April 19th, 1995 bombing in Oklahoma City at the Murrah Federal Building. It's about the tree that stood even after the horrific events of that day. A family plants an American elm on the Oklahoma prairie just as a capital city is taking root. And the little tree grows as Oklahoma City grows until 9:02 a.m., April 19th, 1995, the day America fell silent at the hands of one of its own. As rubble from the Alfred P. Murrah building is cleared, the charred tree, its branches tattered and filled with evidence, faces calls that it be cut down. The only obstacle, a few people who marvel at that. Like them, it is still there at all. The next spring, when the new leaf appears providing the tree is alive, word spreads like a prairie wildfire through the city and the world. And the tree, now a beacon of hope and strength, is given the name the Survivor Tree. This book is dedicated to the ones we lost, April 19th, 1995. Nearly 100 years ago, I was a tiny cutting from an American elm. A loving family planted me in their yard as the horses and wagons clipped-clopped along the dirt roads of a young town on the Oklahoma prairie called Oklahoma City. That was the beginning of my story. The children and I grew up together as this new American city grew bigger and bigger all around us. Gravel roads became a paved street. Streetcars and automobiles replaced horses and buggies. Men built buildings so tall they were called skyscrapers because they seemed to touch the Oklahoma sky. Those were exciting days. As the years went by, I learned some days bring sadness. The family that loved me and cared for me outgrew their home and had to move away. When moving day came, I gave them my comfort and shade one last time as one by one they hugged me goodbye. That day left me all alone for the first time. Before long, enormous machines rumbled in and gobbled up the old house like goats eating a tasty snack. Then workers with hammers and nails came to build something new. Each day the workers would seek out my shade as they ate lunch or napped on a break. Those were productive days. One afternoon, when the building was nearly finished, I overheard the workers talking about me as they ate their sandwiches nearby. The boss says this tree has got to go. What? We can't cut this tree down. It's the only shade around. Their words worried me, but no one cut me down that day. I was still standing on March 22nd, 1977, when the building opened with a big celebration. The new building was given a name that day, the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. The Murrah Building was such a busy place. Every day, all day long, people scurried in and out. Men and women in suits who helped keep our country running. Ordinary American visitors who needed help from Uncle Sam. And the men and women in uniform who served to keep our country safe. Best of all, there were many children from the little daycare inside the Murrah Building. They came each day to laugh and sing and play under my branches. I always stretched my branches extra wide for them, so everyone had shade out of the Oklahoma sun, including the nice lady with a big red hat, who liked to come and eat her lunch with me. Those were useful days. One bright April morning, as I waited for the children to come out and play, I watched the city start another day. I did not feel the hate in the air, and I did not notice the big yellow truck parked so near the building. Boom! The ground beneath my roots shook, and windows across the city shattered. The explosion was so loud, people heard it more than 50 miles away. Then, silence. That was the day the clocks stopped at 9:02 a.m. What I saw next was stranger still. People did not run away from the burning building. People ran toward it. And then I realized they were running to help people inside. That was a day for courage. Help came first from Oklahoma, but then from everywhere. By the end of that day, first responders from Arizona and New York had arrived. The first responders brought rescue dogs, wearing little shoes on their paws to avoid injury. Dogs and handlers searched tirelessly through the mountain of rubble as day turned to night and back again. One by one, the weary rescue workers and their canine helpers came and rested against my trunk, only to go back and search more. My charred branches had no shade to offer them. Still, I was glad to give them what comfort I could that day. Like so many in Oklahoma City, I was not sure I would survive the bombing. That is what it had been, the loud noise that shook our city that April morning. A homemade bomb hidden in a yellow moving truck, left there by a young man who let hate fill his heart. The young man would be caught and would pay for his crime. Our city would be left to deal with the destruction the young man had left behind. Once again, the calls came to cut me down. "It's gotta come down. There's evidence in those branches," one man said. "Look at it," said another one. "It's barely standing. It'll come down soon enough by itself." A third, with amazement, whispered, "I can't believe it is still here." They did not cut me down that day. Instead, they climbed into my blackened branches and gently removed the debris and evidence that had collected there. Did they know I was alive that day? What was left of the Murrah building was put under a big, bright spotlight, and a fence went up to keep the area safe. And then, to everyone's surprise, the people began to come to the fence, 24 hours a day, rain or shine. I watched as the visitors comforted one another and tied messages and keepsakes to the fence. Teddy bears, pictures, American flags, a single red rose, a fireman's hat, a child's drawing, letters both long and short. The gifts filled the fence not once, but over and over again. Each and every one was carefully saved when its time on the fence was over. Then, 33 days, 21 hours, and 59 minutes after the day the city went silent, America gathered to watch the last remnants of the Murrah building come thundering to the ground. No one would ever again have to look at the gaping wound that hate had wrought. But the fence, it stayed, and the people, they still came. Those were healing days. The first summer after the bombing was followed by the first fall. The trees in the neighborhood had turned bright with color and then were softly covered in the snows by the first winter. Through it all, I stood, charred and alone, waiting. Those were uncertain days. I felt the warmth of spring arrive and the buds well up in my branches. I knew before anyone could tell me that I was healing. just as people of Oklahoma City were healing. When my first leaf appeared, it caused quite a stir. The tree, it survived. That was a day of promise. The news spread like an Oklahoma wildfire through the city, the country, and then the world. People began to call me the survivor tree. The people still came to the fence, but now they also come to see me, as once the little children and the nice lady had done. They said I gave them hope that they, too, could survive, despite what had happened. My days had purpose once again. We gathered that first April to remember the 168 people we lost on the 19th day of April, 1995. I was there, as I always had been. I was a tree that love had planted. I had become a symbol that love will always conquer hate. The families left that day with seedlings for me to plant at their home, a remembrance of their loved ones and a tradition still followed to this day. My offspring now grow in every state of the Union, including one hallowed ground in the memorial site of the September 11th, 2001 attacks on the World Trade Center in New York City. It has been many years since the world went silent that beautiful, clear April morn, but every single day the people still come. Below me, a tranquil memorial park now stands with 168 chairs, one for each person we lost that day. One is for the nice lady who no longer comes for lunch. 19 smaller chairs for the children who once played beneath my shade. And one for the nurse who chose to run toward danger on that fateful day. People from all over the world come now to stand by me and remember. They mourn what was done in the name of hate and what we lost that day. And as they wipe away their tears, they vow to never let such an act of hatred happen again. They leave, promising to teach their children the power of love and tolerance. I watch them go and know our world will be better for them having come here to see this place, to learn about what happened on April 19th, 1995. A day we promise never to forget. Thank you, St. Mary's students, for listening to the book. Please pray for the families and the survivors of the bombing that happened April 19th, 1995, a day that we will never forget.